Get out another piece of paper, and at the top of this one, you can write Mounds. Some books call it Mounds also. And once again, outline your hand. And basically, as I mentioned before on the beach, we have the gods and goddesses right here in the palm of our hand. I'm just going to indicate where they are to you right now in this map, and then we'll talk a little bit about what each one means and what the quality is. Once again, I've made an overlay, and you'll notice that there is a mount under each finger, and the finger takes on the attribute of the mount. Okay, so starting here now with the index finger. The index finger takes on the quality of Jupiter. Jupiter is the ruler of the universe and talks about, as the ruler of the universe, is talking about our relationship to pride, ambition, honor, how it is that we direct ourselves out in the world, how we handle responsibility. Now, there's a negative quality in Jupiter as well. Jupiter can sometimes not only be self-assurance, but can be this overemphasis, like a person who's power-hungry. Or another negative quality of Jupiter, somebody who has an overemphasized Jupiter, could be someone who is irresponsible, shirking responsibility. Saturn, Lord of the universe, under the middle finger, what we find is that Saturn also has come to represent in human consciousness how we deal with boundaries, how we handle obstacles, our sense of security and trust. Apollo, or the sun, right here under our ring finger, spreading its rays over everything, talks about how it is that we spread our rays of light, our creative self-expression. The positive side, of course, is this exuberance in being able to express oneself and a need for recognition for our creative works. The negative side of Apollo can be a tendency towards having a big ego or overinflated pride, a need to be center stage. The last god is Mercury. Mercury, the divine herald. Mercury is quick-witted, deals with communication, health, sexuality, business, and finances. All of these qualities are attributed to Mercury. A strong Mercury talks about our ability to be very diplomatic and eloquent in our language. A negative Mercury, bent or crooked, might indicate someone who is bent or crooked in their communication in some way or another. And then when we move into the next part of the hand, we find that we've got Mars. There's the plane of Mars in the center of the hand. The negative quality of Mars is right here, above Venus. This negative quality of Mars talks about how we handle aggression, direct our energy, handle anger, frustration, fear, anxiety. And in fact, we find that the way to handle those, just by the placement of Mars in the hand, the way to handle that is through the goddess of love, through Venus. The children of Mars and Venus, when joined, was harmony. One of the children of these two parts of ourselves when we blend them together. The other quality of Mars rests on the other side of the hand, which is above the moon and below Mercury. This part of Mars is valiant, honorable, courageous, and having a loyalty to the self. In fact, we need this quality of Mars when we travel into the depths of the moon, into the underworld, the world of Hecate. Mercury, you'll remember from our mythology, was the god who could travel into the underworld, and the only god who could. Before going into the underworld, Mercury needs to pass through and take courage and then travel down. So what we find is in the palm of our hand a whole cosmogony, a view of human consciousness. How is it that we can be the best human beings possible? And what we find also then is that the proper relationship when we bring the gods into the goddesses is that we have a very powerful tool. But the power really depends on the placement of the thumb. The thumb is our description of individuality. If we put our thumb like this and we want to make a punch, we can break our thumb and hurt ourselves. When we place our thumb over the gods and goddesses, we have something very powerful. Speaking of the thumb is an unnamed aspect of the hand. The thumb, top part of the thumb, represents will. This part of the thumb represents logic or reason. And in a manner of speaking, it represents that higher will and that higher mind, which can't even be named by a particular god or goddess. It represents that unnameable aspect of the divine, which is represented by the thumb. And again, another metaphor. The thumb is what distinguishes us from our brother animals, our animal brothers and sisters. And so it is that this element of the divine within us is as evolved from the named gods and goddesses within us as we are from our animal brothers and sisters. To the gods extending out through the fingers, what we notice is we have the goddesses in the palm of the hand. Starting with Venus under the thumb area. Venus was the goddess of love and beauty, divine beauty. And she talks about our appreciation in human consciousness for culture, history, art, how it is that we relate to others and our world. In her negative aspect, she has a tendency to only look superficially at the outside of things and has a tendency towards vanity. What we have now in the other half of the hand, in the percussion part of the hand, is Luna. Now Luna, the moon, was actually in the ancient days a triple goddess. Over time, the triple goddess aspect has become forgotten, but there's been an awakening again of feminine consciousness. And if we look at the moon goddess, we find that she has three attributes. The deepest, darkest attribute is associated with the goddess Hecate. Hecate is the goddess of the underworld. She was a Titan goddess who was able to take the invisible worlds and create. She represents our psychic, intuitive power, ESP, contact with spirits, mediumship. The next goddess in the middle part of the percussion is related to Diana. Diana was the huntress with her quiver of arrows, able to tame the wild beasts, able to tame the pains of childbirth. She talks about that unpredictable part of our nature, that wild part of our nature, as wild as a woman giving birth or as wild as an animal in the forest. There is that part of our nature as well, which can be tamed by the goddess Diana. Then, last but not least, there's Selene, the mother, who is the top part of the moon. Selene talks about that quality, like the moon itself, darkness, having this luminous orb. She is the light in our own inner world. She gives us that ability to reflect upon ourselves, to imagine, to dream, and talks about our creative imagination, our ability to fantasize and create with the mind, images, dreams.